The old paradigm question that we are used to asking, that our media loves to reinforce, that all of our stories and many of our Hollywood movies have always supported, is who is the enemy? Who is the enemy? And in this video, I want to discuss why we need to shift away from who is the enemy and into what is the enemy. Hello, co-creators, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Carly, and I create videos, resources, and journeys on my website, and collaborate with other people on creating resources that really help us as individuals to awaken your, or shall I say, our extraordinary, and to create space within the self and within the wider collective, so that we can transform into a thriving new paradigm and make this sort of, we call it new earth, new world, new paradigm. We've heard it called many different things, but the bottom line is we can't really come into a new way of being in our systems and stories until we find that new paradigm within ourselves, and until we understand that it operates from a completely different energy, a completely different space, our heart space. And in this video, I want to discuss why we need to shift away from who is the enemy and into what is the enemy. Right, we're going to talk about why we need to make this shift, the problem with who, and how what creates more space. We're also going to discuss what enemy energy is, and we'll do a little bit of reflection on what that is and how we can identify it. And then I want to give it a contrast. So once we understand what enemy energy is, then we want to be able to offer a new energy, right? A way of transmuting it. And how do we step into something that is different? And so we will look at 5 practical ways that you can, in daily practice, use to help you navigate your own responses and how you show up in the world, and also how you and we are processing a new way of taking in information. Please do keep in mind that most of our mainstream media is designed with very old paradigm, is intended and does not have high intentions. And so how do we, but that said, as we open up into a lot of other new narratives, new media, people stepping into their own voices, and what's happening is we're, right, age of human disruption, we're having this immense collision and chaos. And so that is why I really wanted to put this video out now, because the truth is I don't have all of the answers. Of course I don't. And I stay open and do the best that I can every single day. And I know that you're trying to do the same as well. But the truth is it's really hard. We're in a deliberately, in my opinion, unfortunately at this point in time, I do think a lot of this is very deliberate. We're in a very divisive, harmful, destructive old paradigm trap. And it is incredibly stressful because, given this situation, there are very real implications for ourselves and each other, no matter what your truth is, no matter what side, no matter how crazy or how rational you think you are, or you think other people are, I should say. It really doesn't matter. We're all in immense states of stress and confusion. Again, it happens to be my opinion that it's deliberate, and I share that with you because I want you to bring your awareness and consider that when you are processing information and in dialogues with people today. Who is the enemy is a very traditional, boring, and, to be completely honest, just ridiculous question. because no single person or single group can hold all of the quote unquote evil of this world. By design, humans and beings and are nuanced. We have a little bit of light. Now maybe we've got a lot of dark. But we all have a blend of both of these within us. And so when we ask the question, who is the enemy? One, we put unrealistic judgment on other people and groups, right? Because nobody is 100% one thing. And the other thing that it does is it really takes away accountability, right? Immediately when we look for who is the enemy, we're looking outside of ourselves constantly. And while there very, 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 very much are people and organizations that are likely working against us in some form or another, it does not mean that we have no accountability. And we are responsible at the end of the day for how we show up in our lives and how we treat other people. And that gets me to the next question, which is, what can we control in a world of chaos, in this landscape where the situation just seems so big and so beyond any one person, and it is. At the same time, what we can control and what we need to bring our awareness back to and find our center in, is we have a responsibility, if we are self-leading, if we are choosing integrity and leadership to the best of our capacity at any moment in time and looking to develop in that way, then our job is that we can be accountable for our own behavior and how we're showing up. So we want to identify what this enemy energy is so that we can shift out of it in ourselves first. And that's really what I want to look at is how can we shift out, recognize destructive enemy energy within the self. And then I want to give you these antidotes and these suggestions on what I have found in my journey to help still acknowledge truth and not let things pass, but at the same time to do it in a healthier new paradigm way. What is enemy energy? So if we take away who, we acknowledge that all human beings, all energy in the universe is made of a combination of both, and that we need both, right? That's non-dual thinking. It's not about resisting our quote unquote bad, but integrating it. That's the alchemy process, integrating it and making better choices, making thriving choices. So before we go into, though, what that thriving looks like, let's talk a little bit about the enemy, because I think we all can feel that energy right now very clearly. What is, when you think of the antagonist in the movie, or if you think of who the bad guy is in your head right now, or woman, or group, right? What is it that they do? I'm going to go through some really common things. I want you to think about it, though. What is enemy energy for you? So enemy energy, the way that we normally see it in storytelling, is few people are really 100% sadistic, but it does have a certain form of exploiting other people for your own benefit, for your own gain, or for your own control. It oftentimes, it feeds fear, right? So the enemy really wants you to be terrified, because people are much easier to control when they are scared. The enemy wants to look like, will either rule from fear. I will kill you if you do not respond to me. That would be very old authoritarian, traditionally toxic masculine energy. If you disobey me, you will be whipped in the middle of not whipped, you'll be beheaded, decapitated in the middle of the courtyard, sort of thing. Oh, sorry, that's a horrible image. And it could also be toxic feminine energy, which is emotional manipulation. So we think of toxic feminine energy can be like wearing the scarlet A. The enemy energy often is looking for revenge, right? It has, you have done me wrong. You have caused me pain. I am the victim of this horrible thing. And now I want revenge, or I want power over you, because the truth is I'm hurt and in pain, and I'm actually a little child that, it's an inner child wound. So I don't trust other people to have control. So I want to have the controls, or I want you to feel the pain that I have felt. That's very often where our kind of enemy energy can go. Enemy energy often shows no compassion or empathy. Enemy energy, as I said before, exploits people for their own gain or experimentation. Blames other people or other groups for everything that's not working. Does not take accountability. Holds grudges. Okay, so these... please do, as just, it's something to reflect on. And again, when we take away who is the bad guy and trying to figure out who is the enemy, and we start to recognize this as an energy that we all have within us, and we can start to identify when we are in our enemy energy. Now, how do we heal and navigate enemy energy in the self and in the collective? What really, we've talked about how it can express itself, but what are these things really doing? This is how I suggest we redefine good and bad. Good and bad have a lot of human stories depending on your background, your culture, your specific history, family history. You're going to have a slightly different understanding. We all have different stories around good and bad. So I want to disconnect. I want to free us from those stories for a moment. And instead, I would like to offer this visual, okay, and this understanding. So what enemy energy does, enemy energy is destructive. It's taking us out of harmony, out of growth, right? It's destructive. And it's destructive in the way that it causes disconnect. Enemy energy disconnects us from our key relationships that hold us together, that we all crave. It is the extraordinary that we all crave. Enemy energy disconnects us from the self. It disconnects us from each other. So it disconnects us from a relationship with ourselves, trusting ourselves, our own empowerment, our power to take our own path, to learn in our own way. Really, freedom, right, is what we would truly call it, is our self's, our sovereignty. So it takes us out of relationship with the self, puts everything outside of us. I can solve your problem. Somebody else needs to solve your problem. This product needs to solve your problem. When the truth is, in the end, we really don't need any of it. Doesn't mean that we don't have some of it, but that relationship with self. So enemy energy disconnects us from the relationship with self, disconnects us from each other. Hello. Divisiveness. It will put us in complete disconnect and disharmony with each other. That's enemy energy. When we disconnect from other people, it will take us out of connection, disconnect us from our planet, and disconnect us from the universe from which we are undeniably made from, right? We are a part of. We are from this universe. We are from this planet. We are made of the same biology. We are made of this earth. We are meant to be in connection with each other, and we are meant to be in connection with self. So enemy energy disconnect is about disconnection, disharmony, things that give us the illusion of separateness. Thriving new paradigm energy and a healthier directions, if you think of it as just two directions, there's a long spectrum, right? We can move in this way, this destructive way, or we can continue to move in a constructive, harmonic sort of way. And what we seek, what thriving new paradigm energy starts to acknowledge, would be people, systems, and stories and choices that advocate for and nurture a connection with self, a connection with others, a connection with our planet, and a connection with our cosmos. Two directions that we all crave. And again, this is not, there are many varying stories. I'm just going to keep it very general and high level at this point. We, every day, are faced with these two directions in our stories and in our choices on how we show up in our lives and how we process information and discern what is healthy and what is not. Discern between what is healthy and what is not. Disconnect is enemy energy. Disconnect, anything that supports a disconnect with self, a disconnect with others, a disconnect with our planet, a disconnect with the cosmos. Thriving new paradigm connection. Seeking to understand and to support and to create healthier connection with self, connection with each other, connection with our planet, connection with our cosmos. Now I want to discuss 5 practical ways that, well, it's 5 ways that we typically show up in old energy and old paradigm. And it's not that these things are untrue. It's just that it's not the productive way. There's a better way of using that energy. Okay? It'll make more sense when I go through the pillars directly. Number 1, judgment. Judgment is a very typical, immediate, it's one of the most common energy choices, actions that we take every day, and that our media and our systems and stories currently supports judgment. Why is judgment so intensely enemy energy? Because it's a separation, right? It is saying that if I'm judging something, you are separate from me, and I have to keep a finite, like a defined stance against you. In judgment, whether we're judging ourselves or judging other people, there's no room for being wrong, which is a problem when it comes to growth, transformation, expansion, reaching compromise, understanding each other. None of these things are possible when we are in an energy of intense judgment. When we're in an energy of intense judgment, our ego is far too concerned with being right to be able to listen, see nuance, be open, look for opportunities for self-growth, recognize uncertainty, all of these things. Judgment doesn't care about all of those things. Judgment is truly when our ego gets involved, either out of fear or a desire to dominate. And it's an unhealthy, destructive enemy energy. So what is the alternative? The alternative is compassionate boundaries. Compassionate boundaries. I speak to compassion because immediately what this does, it is judgment. Instead of having judgment for someone, challenge yourself to understand them and have compassion for them. I don't care how hard it is. If you want to be a part of, if we want to see a new paradigm shift, if we're actually here to make things better, then this is This is something that we have to learn how to do, and that is to have compassion for everyone and everything, to know that I can step away from you and acknowledge that something isn't healthy. See the what of enemy energy in you, in a party, in this group story, right? And it doesn't make me hate you. It doesn't make me judge you in this harsh emotional way, because I can understand where it comes from. First, I have love for you no matter what. However, based on where I'm at this moment in time, and being honest and staying in integrity with myself, and where society is at this moment in time, or again, whether this is a relationship with the self, whether we're talking about a friendship, a relationship with others or society, the planet, or the universe, we set up a compassionate boundary. And that boundary is, I'm going to choose not to engage with this at this moment in time. I'm going to step away. Step away from this behavior in myself. Step away from this person. Not quite as relevant for planet and cosmos in my head at this point, but you get the idea. Okay, so if we can catch ourselves in judgment and instead shift into compassionate boundaries. Now, I recognize that sometimes what some people are going to say, well, what about when it's, really something that's impacts other people, or, is immediately pressing in a sort of violence way. That's another conversation. That's kind of stepping things up in more levels. Right now, I just want to talk about addressing the general impulse of judgment and how to shift it into compassionate boundary. Second shift that we can make is to move away from force, which is control, trying to take away other people's sovereignty. Again, assuming that we know better, exploiting others for our own gain, moving out of a force narrative or force actions and into invitation. You don't need to force your narrative or your way of seeing the world or your decisions on anybody else or your solution on anybody else. Invite people into create a new space, create what you think is the best, is a better option at a given moment in time, or you simply just want to share, and then invite people in. Invite people into that perspective, invite people to see your perspective. And what this does also is when we invite people instead of forcing, when we're not judging but we're keeping up compassionate boundaries, then we are able, again, there's space. Notice how all of these are creating space for my own growth as well. So I have a certain narrative right now that I really think is most likely true. Is it true for sure? Of course not, which we'll get to in another point. But instead of forcing my perspective on you, I invite you in to this one, and then you invite me into yours, and I go, oh, well, that one point, I really didn't think about that. Thank you. And that allows somebody else to listen to you as well, because nobody likes being forced into something. Well, unless we're scared, right? When we're really fearful, we can kind of regress, and there is a part of us that is so used to being controlled that we actually do seek it and will be more likely to respond to it, which is interesting. Control also, by the way, has, again, those different forms. It can be physical, like masculine, toxic masculine sort of physical aggression of control, or it can be toxic feminine emotional control, which is guilting and shaming. That is the most widespread thing I've ever seen these days. Guilting and shaming is enemy energy. Whether you like it or not, we have to acknowledge that within ourselves and within each other. It's very common for us to go to guilt and shame. We have to transcend it. We have to alchemize and move past it and find more productive ways of encouraging healthier growth. The third shift that we can make is from blaming to accountability, victimhood to accountability. Why? One simple thing, because victimhood does not serve us. It does not serve you. You could have the worst thing, the truth that you have endured something horrible, most likely is very true. That the world is unjust, definitely true. That some people have done some really horrible things. Wow, is that true? We can acknowledge pain and heal it in ourselves, but that is the accountability portion. Victimhood as a mindset and an energy never serves us, because it immediately goes to that disconnect. It's disconnecting us from our power to heal ourselves. We all have the ability to heal ourselves. And so the accountability is much more empowering, right? That's going to allow us to step into healthier new paradigm energies when we each take accountability from for our own healing, and acknowledge that pain is a human experience that we have all had in one way or another. Yes, certain individuals and groups much more so than others in this life. That's very true. It doesn't change the action. And it doesn't change the fact that staying in victimhood will never be empowering. You lose. You will always lose. And we will always lose for as long as we think that way. If we think that we are victims of corporate, if we think that we are victims of our systems, of our establishment, if we think that we are victims of a matrix, if we think that we are victims of our abusive parents, if we think that we are victims of that first relationship, that narcissist, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. We have to acknowledge it so that we can learn from it, because pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. Pain is our greatest teacher. Honor, that'll be for another video, but really how we can move out of that victim energy is understanding that our pain and that experience is what helps us to wake up, is what helps us to wake up to what? It helps us to wake up to what love, connection is. It helps us to wake up to this spectrum, that we have a choice, each and every one of us, and as a collective we have a choice. That is the reason that reason I know can be a human thing, but just follow with me for a second. That is why it exists in our lives. Otherwise it serves no purpose. It's just suffering. So don't let it be suffering. Let it be pain that helps us to understand and to move into higher vibrations, into new paradigm, into thriving, by showing us what disconnect is so that we can start to behave in ways that allow for more connection. Fourth shift, from certainty into growth. From certainty into growth and uncertainty, right? Growth through uncertainty, I should say. Okay, there was a speaker once that I heard. He took up a bunch of different diets, found one that was claimed to be, the one that's going to lead to the best health and the best athletic performance, blah, 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 certain. He does the whole thing. He's on it for 2 years. He's looking really great. He goes into the doctor and finds out essentially that he's almost on his deathbed. And he calls the author of the book and he says, right, reams him. Like, how can you sell something like this? This is what the doctor said. This is a la la la. And the author of the book says, well, it is true that in the few cases with certain blood types or people, that this diet actually can be really, really problematic and even cause some big health problems. And he was like, well, what is wrong with you? Why wouldn't you discuss that in the book? He says, because nobody likes uncertainty and nuance. Certainty is what sells. This gets us back to that accountability point as well. We have created a world because we have agreed to a world because we all seek certainty when we are scared. But certainty is the greatest illusion of time, is the greatest illusion in our lives. There's no such thing as certainty. So we can shift away from certainty, which is, in my opinion, simply our avoidance of vulnerability. Because when we are certain, then we can be all righteous and sure that we have the right thing and we're the good guy and we're super smart and we have it figured out and I'm so certain and I'm so great. So of course we all want to be certain because there's no vulnerability in certainty. But of course that is the great illusion and the block and the reason that it is enemy energy. It does not acknowledge the truth being uncertainty, that no single person, no single group will ever fully know all things. And no matter how much research or science or whatever we want to put behind something, it's still not certain. It is more likely. It is not certain. Certainty sells, uncertainty doesn't. This is the shift we have to make. Start talking to people and looking at information not for certainty, but to explore and to grow and to acknowledge uncertainty. This is a new paradigm way of being that will allow us to create space for constant expansion. So I'm sorry, that was certainty to expansion. And the fifth and final point is to move out of the small, to shift out of the small now into the big now. We are so tempted to see everything in life as so urgent. And there is urgency in the fact that we are accountable for how we show up in this world. But history and time and the universe is so much bigger than not just any one of us, but any one lifetime. Anytime that you find yourself falling into the spiral of the small now, which again, media and old paradigm and destructive enemy energy loves to focus on. It loves to make you obsessed with the small now and how it's destroying you and everything's right. No, you have to be urgent. You must do this. You must do that. Go, go, go. Rat race. And it is the most stressful. It's an impractical, unevolved way of being in the world. It's not truthful. It has no wisdom. Okay, so every time that you feel yourself getting pulled into the small now, take a deep breath, rise into the big now, and see that who you are and how you show up and what choices you make today do matter. But it is all so much bigger than you. And what happens and how things unfold are going to unfold and happen. And the only thing that you can control is how you show up. That's it. That's all any of us can really do, is just do better at showing up, do better at making other choices, do better at choosing connection over disconnection. And if we all did that, we would relieve a lot of the suffering of the small now and create space for much faster transformation in the larger scheme of the big now. I hope that this video was helpful for you today. Please do put in the comments any questions that you have, and I would be happy to elaborate on these points more. As a quick summary, please stop if we can. I'm not going to say please stop, but I'm going to ask myself and you that maybe we just pause when we ask the question, who is the enemy? And start asking, what is the enemy? And then we stop asking or start looking at what we can control, which is our own behavior, how we show up, and our ability to process a new kind of world and exchange of information. And what is old paradigm, destructive enemy energy in ourselves and in the information that we're being fed, and how can we discern in ourselves and in the information that we're being fed so that we can make conscious choices to create space for new thriving paradigm energy. 5 specific shifts that we can start to bring awareness to and change. Move from judgment to compassionate boundaries, from force to invitation, from blaming and victimhood to personal accountability and healing, from certainty to expansion, from obsessive small now, transcending into the big now. Much love and strength to you all. If you would like to join me on a live gathering journey that will be going into a whole workshop and really great dialogues and meet other new paradigm leaders, people that are consciously choosing to discover and to awaken and align to their leadership energy and engage their creativity, then please do sign up on the website. I would love to have you. There is no cost for any of my programming at this time. There's just donations if you find things to be helpful. Much love and strength to you all. Talk soon. Bye-bye.